calumny, which the offended party may deem proper to bring against the offender. In this case, the offender shall be punished by the maximum period of the penalty. And by postdating a check or issuing a check in payment of an obligation when the offender had no funds in the bank, or his funds deposited therein were not sufficient to cover the amount of the check, the failure of the drawer of the check to deposit the amount necessary to cover his check within 3 days from receipt of notice from the bank and or the payee or holder, the said check had been dishonored for lack or insufficiency of funds, shall be prima facie evidence of deceit constituting false pretense or fraudulent act. By obtaining any food, refreshment, or accommodation at a hotel, inn, restaurant, boarding house, lodging house, or apartment house, and the like without paying therefore with intent to defraud the proprietor or manager thereof, or by obtaining credit at a hotel, inn, restaurant, boarding house, lodging house, or apartment house, by the use of any false pretense or by abandoning or surreptitiously removing any part of his baggage from a hotel, inn, restaurant, boarding house, lodging house, or apartment house after obtaining credit, food, refreshment, or accommodation therein, without paying for his food, refreshment, or accommodation. So, take note of this ha. Estafa na siya. Kung makaon ka, di ka humayad, that's estafa. Sakay ka ng check-in ko ang hotel, motel, or whatever, na di ka humayad, that is estafa. Through any of the following fraudulent means, by inducing another by means of deceit to sign any document, estafa na. By resorting to some fraudulent practice to ensure success in a gambling game, by removing, concealing, or destroying in whole or in part any court record, office files, document, or any other papers. That is also estafa. So what are the elements of estafa in general? That the accused defrauded another by abuse of confidence or by means of deceit, and that the damage or prejudice capable of pecuniary estimation is caused to the offended party or third person. Sa maning pasabot aning capable of pecuniary estimation. Second element, the basis of the penalty, it is necessary that the damage or prejudice be capable of pecuniary estimation because the amount of the damage or prejudice is the basis of the penalty of estafa. So, gimension mo din yung amount. Pasabot, value in money, pecuniary. So, kung iiladon ka, kung iladon ka o butang, iladon ka mo, wataan kang butang. So, paunsa ni mo mabasihan ang penalty sa giilan sa imuha, estafa sa imuha. Kung mawadaan ka, makuhaan ka og butang, like for example, ang pinaka-love kay nimo nga cellphone o cellphone na ilad ka na nahatag nimo yung cellphone alam ko tong cellphone means be magna ko tawagan ana, so imong gihatag abi nimo tawagan pag hatag nimo wala na salig ka nga iuli sa imo wala niya giuli sige mo tawagan siya kailangan gud nimo na iuli na di gyapon nimo iuli. So estafa na siya actually na ilad ka. So paun sa nimo mahibalan ang iyang penalty sa gihimo niya nga pangilad sa ibuha. Paunsa nimo ibalaan? Asa dito ang penalty niya? Cellphone man ang giilad sa imuha, paunsa nimo cellphone ang giilad to sa kawat pa na siya, na magyapon na siya nga element. Paunsa nimo ibalaan pilay penalty, pilay imprisonment niya sa pag-ilad niya sa imuha sa cellphone. Ato baga daw ko ana. Correct ka, Joel Singson. Mo nang bot pasabot sa capable of pecuniary estimation. So, pilay amount, capable of, tanan mga butang na ilad ka, dapat na siya equivalent nga value in money. Wala bot pasabot sa pecuniary estimation, ha? At least, kasabot na mo. Tanan, kung kwarta lang ang nailad sa imo, automatic, right there and then, hibala di mo pilay na ilad, kung say damage, pilay yung penalty, based sa kwarta nga nawala sa imo, di ba? Pero kung butang, so you have to make sure na capable ang butang o pecuniary estimation. Like for example, ang nawala sa imo ang right nimo nga muhanggap og hangin. Pila man ang hangin? O ba? So is it capable of pecuniary estimation? Ang right nimo nga maghanggap sa hangin, wala na. So paunsa nimo nga that's correct, Maria Margaret Montilla. Montilla ba to? Montanilla. You are correct. Basta na yung mga object na capable of pecuniary estimation, that is it. That is it. Katong mga rights na, mga obligations na ikuan pa mo, di man siya capable of pecuniary estimation. Isot na siya i-quantify, no? Para mahimo siyang estafa. Anyway, are the elements of the other kind of estafa with unfaithfulness or abuse of confidence, namely by altering the substance, quantity, quality, or anything of value which the offender shall deliver by virtue of an obligation to do so, even though such obligation be based on an immoral or illegal consideration. So sa elements that the offender has an onerous obligation to deliver something of value, that he alters its substance, quantity, quality, that damage or prejudice is caused to another. Again, this must be all capable of pecuniary estimation. Altering the substance. Sana yung example ani. So when a person sold to another 1,000 tins on the assurance that they contained opium, when in fact only 16 tins contain opium while the others contain only molasses, the crime of estafa under this subsection was committed because there was an alteration of the substance from opium which he promised to deliver to molasses which was actually delivered. Opium sa unang mga panahon, this is in People versus Mansala, wala, dili pa man to siya illegal siguro, but that's why it was subject to a contract, ang opium. Altering quantity, the accused pledged to accompany the tobacco's 20,000 balis of hemp. Hemp, karang balis of hemp, tobacco. By declaring in an instrument that such number of balis was actually inexistent, the accused, knowing that he had only 12,000 balis in the warehouse, the manager of the Compañía de Tabacos, trusting the apparent good faith of the accused, continued to advance the latter money and goods on account in the sum of 300,000 pesos. This is estafa by altering the quantity of the thing the accused promised to deliver by virtue of an obligation to do so. Altering the quantity, A agreed to sell B first-class rice and received from B a purchase price thereof. But when the rice was delivered to B, it was found to be a poor kind of rice. The damage consists in the difference in the value of the rice. Abuse of confidence elements, that the money, goods, or other personal property be received by the offender in trust or on commission or for administration or under any other obligation involving the duty to make delivery of or to return the same. That there be misappropriation or conversion of such money or property by the offender, or denial is part of such receipt. That such misappropriation or conversion or denial is to the prejudice of another, and that there is a demand made by the offended party to the offender. So the fourth element is not necessary when there is evidence of misappropriation of the goods by the defendant. Check is included in the word money. The distinction between the conversion of check and the conversion of cash in relation to the formal allegations of information of conversion of a specific sum of money is not material in estafa. Sa kung ma-issue ka check, duha ka book kaso imong basta mo-swak lang siya. When you are issuing a check in exchange for goods, kana siya, estafa na siya when in times nga pagpa-incas nimo sa check, mutalbog siya, mo bounce siya, estafa na siya. At the same time, pwede ka matirahan o violation against BP bilang 22, bouncing check law. So duha kaso imo pwede ma-encounter dira. By the way, kita naman mo bouncing check. Tagaanta mo ka ng illustration sa bouncing check ha. Sulod ko nakadawat ko check like worth 10,000 pesos. Tapos check inkas ako at 10,000 pesos nakapangalan sa ako. So ako nato bangko, sa bangko nga naa ang check dira. Inkas na ako akong tawag ani. Akong gi-endorse sa likod. Endorsement is sign ka sa likod before nimo ihatag sa cashier para tagaan ka cash dito nga 10,000 pesos. Paghatag nako sa cashier, humana ko pirma. Paghatag nako sa cashier, wala na gunitan sa cashier ang cheque. Ako nabuya na ako, nahulog ang cheque tapos nitalbog gani siya. Talbog na siya, bouncing check na siya. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Ang bouncing check actually kung papa-encash nimo, dili siya sufficient ang account dito patawag mo sa check wala may sulod din check dire. Bouncing check na siya. Pumidya to ako kanina itong ni bounce sa cashier. Just an illustration of bouncing check. Basta check duha ka kaso akong as I was saying, duha ka kaso ang pwede nimo ma-suffer sa check but what's my issue nimo? Pero kung ang pag-issue nimo sa check bayad sa utang, dili ka ma-charge og estafa ana. Ato lang ka man-charge o estafa kung imong pasaligan nga, oh, good lang yun na, basta in exchange of goods, no? Nakadawat ka goods, issue kang cheque, tapos pagpa-incas tayo sa cheque, wala siya sulod, ang account wala sulod, so nag-bounce siya, nagtalbog ang cheque. That is estafa. At the same time, the issuance, by mere issuance of the check nga walay sulod, that is also violation of Batas Pambansa bilang 22. It's actually Batas Pambansa bilang 22. Sabi ng presidential ng Decree number 15. Okay, kanin siyang estafa na the failure by the trustee to turn over the proceeds of the sale of the goods. Kato kanin sa ato akong illustration kanina sa suin o sa Avon, o pag magtagaan ka goods, ang obligation nimo is baligya, ang halin imong iuli, i-remit nimo, of course i-deduct nimo tong imong ganansya nito, percentage nimo or whatever commission. Pag dili nimo iuli ang halin, despite na halin na, at you will now be liable for estafa. Yan mo na ang nakasulod aning Presidential Decree number 115. The thing was received on commission. Estafa nimo, balibad ka na nadawat nimo nya mayo ka wala ko nadawat, pero nadawat tayo nimo, that is estafa. Estafa by postdating a check or issuing a check in payment of an obligation. So, sa mani, elements that offender postdated a check or issued a check in payment of the obligation, that such postdating or issuing a check was done when the offender had no funds in the bank or his funds deposited therein were not sufficient to cover the amount of the check. Okay, prima facie evidence of deceit. The failure of the drawer of the check to deposit the amount necessary to cover his check within 3 days from receipt of notice from the bank. Kasi pag ma-deposit ka o cheque sa banko, i-deposit mo sa imong account, i-issue sa imong cheque, i-deposit mo sa aming account. Tapos pag na-clearing within the day, sumutahan na karon ang katong bangko sa katong issuing bank kung nabay amount ni nga cheque cover 10,000 pesos, pila amount dia pila sa iya account. Mingon na 5,000 pesos lang, katong atong tag-iya na issue sa cheque, i-notify to sa iyang bangko, oy na kay cheque dire nga 10,000 pesos sa imong deposit dire, nabili sa imong kwartais, 5,000 na lang. So, i-replenish ni siya yung amount para ma-cover tong cheque, para dili mo talbog ang cheque. Kung dili niya, within 3 days kung dili niya buhaton, ma-replenish ang amount sa cheque, sa yung account, tapos ang cheque di na gyud mo talbog yung gihapon. So, this will now be considered as a prima facie evidence of deceit constituting false pretense or fraudulent act. Okay, Batas Pambansa bilang 22, checks without sufficient funds. The mere issuance of a check without sufficient funds or zero funds na yun, close account, is violation of Batas Pambansa bilang 22. Pila man ang pila ang penalty niya. Penalty shall be imprisonment of not less than 30 days but not more than 1 year, or a fine of not less than but not more than double the amount of the check, within which fine shall in no case exceed 200,000 pesos, or both such fine and imprisonment at the discretion of the court. So, mo na ang iyang penalty sa Batas Pambansa bilang unya, kung issue pag yun nimo in payment of the obligation, you will also be liable for estafa, aside from violation of Batas Pambansa bilang 22. The gravamen of BP 22 is the issuance of a check, not the payment of the obligation. The law has made the mere act of issuing a bump check a malum prohibitum. So the issuance of the check which is not funded in itself is violation of BP 22. Dapat na notice of dishonor, ha? Kung wala notice of dishonor niya, di niya ma-receive a notice of dishonor. This actually can also be called as demand letter, demand to pay. Oy, kanin mo check dire, you are, according to my client, you have issued check which bounds due to insufficient funds. Please consider this as our first demand and a notice of dishonor. Please pay the amount of the check that you issued to my client. Ana among usual nga communication sa mga nag-issue check. And then, kaning demand letter or notice of dishonor shall have to be received by the issuer of the check actually, personally. Dili siya dapat i-mail lang. Kung email lang nimo, nalayan ang kadawat sa mail, dili siya pwedeng nahimo siyang evidence nga na ay notice of dishonor, because this is very important element of the issuance of the check kanang para mapin down nimo sa batas pambansa bilang 22 ano yung notice of dishonor or demand letter to pay. Mayroon siya ang section 7 ang kutob ang BP 22 This is approved on April 3, 1979 batas pambansa bilang 22. Pa-cheque may mga terminology sa cheque Kung ako ang mag-issue sa cheque, ang tawag sa ako, musayin ko, ang tawag sa ako a drawer. So, asa man ako siya ihatag na ko niya sa imuha, pabayad ako sa whatever amount ang pabayad sa imuha. Ikaw ako ang tawag sa imuha, payee. Tapos asa gikan ang cheque, unsa nga bangko siya. Ang kanang bangko wherein this check will be deposited or the funds will be paid. Anong bangkuhan kung asa ko nag-deposit sa ako account niya, nag-issue ko cheque account na ko. Mo na siya ang ginatawag na ko, drawee bank. So ako drawer, ang bangko drawee, ikaw ang itagaan ako, payee. Muna siya ang mga terminology sa sa cheque. Drawer, drawee, payee. Other forms of deceit. Other forms of swindling. The penalty of arresto mayor in its minimum and medium periods, and a fine not less than the value of the damage caused and not more than 3 times such value shall be imposed upon any person who pretending to be the owner of any real property shall convey, sell, encumber or mortgage the same. So dili ikaw tag iya other forms of swindling imong gibaligya, ikaw imong giprenda, you will be liable for other forms of estafa. Any person who knowing that real property is encumbered shall dispose of the same although such encumbrance be not recorded. The owner of any personal property who shall wrongfully take it from its lawful possessor to the prejudice of the latter or any third person. Wrongfully take it. Dahil itong i-force, dahil itong theft, dahil itong robbery, kani lawfully taking it from its lawful possessor to the prejudice of the latter or third person. Personal property rin siya, pero hindi siya mahulog na theft or robbery, but swindling. Any person who to the prejudice of another shall execute any fictitious contract. Any person who shall accept any compensation given him under the belief that it was in payment of services rendered or labor performed by him, when in fact he did not actually perform such services or labor. That's also other form of swindling. Any person who, while being surety in a bond given a criminal or civil action, without express authority from the court or before the cancellation of his bond, or before being relieved from the obligation contracted by him, shall sell, mortgage, or in any other manner encumber the real property or properties with which he guaranteed the fulfillment of such obligation. So, one ang other forms of swindling. And there are explanations by conveying, selling, encumbering, or mortgaging in the real property, pretending to be the owner of the same. That's for paragraph 1 for other forms of swindling. Example, A sold a parcel of land to B. Later, A sold the same parcel of land to C, representing to the latter that A was the owner thereof. At the time he sold the land to C, A was no longer the owner of the property. This is as swindling. Take note, the subject matter of this particular paragraph is a real property. Okay, building as a real property. It is the doctrine in this jurisdiction that true buildings are real property by incorporation, whether they erected by the owner of the land or by usufructuary or leasee. Pero nakakabutan rin, not once merely superimposed on the soil. Superimposing the soil meaning, nagani siya kanang bakil, na bakil nga dili siya, wala siya gilubong. Meaning, ang pag-build sa iya is not with intention to make it permanent. So, himo ang balay pero imong butang ligid ang balay. So, pasabot pwede mo tuklod. That particular house is not a real property. That is personal property. O himo ang balay, imong ibutang float. Float kanang float pag na mubaha, mulutaw ang balay, transfer na po ko sa lain. That is personal property. It's not real property. Because the essence of real property is that incorporation, whether erected by the owner, real property by incorporation, through building by incorporation, erected by the owner of the land or by a usufructuary or leasing. So take note of a building as real property. The others are personal property. Masabi ng encumbrance. That's what I am I was about to tell you. Saan yung encumbrance? Encumbrance includes every right or interest in the land which exists in favor of third persons. Like for example, iprindan ako sa imo ang lupa nako. So naka-encumbered siya, encumbered sa imuha. So dili ana encumbrance nako sa imuha, ana encumbrance nako nga sa lupa, dili na siya mawala kung dili na ko bayaran ako ang utang sa imuha. So na-release na encumbrance, that's it. Sana yung mortgage, an ordinary lease, an attachment, the lien of adjustment, and an execution sale subject to redemption are encumbrances on the land. So take note of the example mortgage, ordinary lease, attachment, lien of adjustment, execution sale. Mo na mga encumbrance examples. Gina-record ba na yung taksa? Pwede mga encumbrance wala ma-record. Like prinda, pwede na i-record. Basta kay kuwaon na akong ang title. Di na kailangan i-record ang title sa Register of Deeds. Basta na sa ko ang title, pag prinda nimo, pag bayaran nimo, yun na akong title. That is not recorded encumbrance ang tawag. Let's go to another article. Swindling a minor. Any person who taking advantage of the inexperience or emotions or feelings of a minor to his detriment shall induce him to assume any obligation or to give any release or execute a transfer of any property right in consideration of some loan of money, credit, or other personal property, whether the loan clearly appears in the document or is shown in any other form, shall suffer the penalty of arresto mayor and a fine of sum ranging from 10 to 50% of the value of the obligation contracted by the minor. So gilan ni mo minor para maka-execute siya o maka-assume siya obligation, maka-issue siya release, maka-execute siya transfer of any property rights. Muna elements sa under Article 317 that the offender takes advantage of the inexperience or emotions or feelings of a minor, that he induces such minor to assume an obligation or to give release or to execute a transfer of any property right, that the consideration is some loan of money, credit, or other personal property, that the transaction is to be to the detriment of such minor. Other deceits. What is the age of a minor, by the way? When the code is silent to the age of the minor as the offended party or victim of offense, it is understood that he must be under 21 years as provided in civil code. But now, the civil code is no longer 21 years. It states it's already reduced to 18 years of age. No, below 18 years of age is minor. Other deceits, the penalty of arresto mayor and a fine of not less than the amount of the damage caused and not more than twice such amount shall be imposed upon any person who shall defraud or damage another by any other deceit not mentioned in the preceding articles of this chapter. Any person who profit or gain shall interpret dreams, make forecasts, mangila din na sila other deceit din tell fortunes or take advantage of the credulity of the public in any other similar manner shall suffer the penalty of arresto minor or fine not exceeding 200 pesos. Karang mga card reader, other deceit din papangila din na sila. Alright, any questions, by the way? Kasabot mo sa lesson, sa papangilad, makita ninyo, kamo mismo, maka-observe mo sa tao, sa ginabuhat sa isang katao. I mean, bisa pag wala tayo kabasaan ng particular may balaan ninyo, may balo ba mong nag-iilad mo sa tao o tao nang-ilad sa uban? May balaan ba ninyo na? Labi na kung pangayon nga kwarta or anything of value, tapos later on, dili day itong mauto yan, klaro ka na ilad, no? Even if you're not reading here the books, the articles that we are reading pertinent to estafa, we can surely tell a person committing fraud or estafa when you get to experience it. Mahibalaan ta nato kinsa nangilad, di ba? Kinsa kabalo dili kabalo nailad diri. Kinsa pa mailad diri. Kinsa sa inyo ang wala pa nailad. Asa peryahan man dili na siya ilad kay nga naman gi-allowed mo na sa barangay, gi-allowed po na sa kuan, basta na sila yung license so dili man po na sila makakuan dia kung wala sila gitag license. It's not pangilad actually. It's just one kind of tawag ani kana mga amusement na siya, gi-allowed sa kuan panahon na sa mga piyesta, di ba? mga perya, piyesta man nakasagaran gawas. Pila ka mailad dako kanang ilad jud diha kanang yun sigurado na ni kaning sigurado nagkakadaog ka ni di ka kadaog. Well, it's your risk nga ana man guna. Kanang investment kani man good. Paano to sa investment ta nganong ninana na. It's actually because of greed na sa tao. Nakay kwarta. And then ang pinaka the best mo ibuhaton sa yung kwarta is tigumon and then wait for the time comes to come nga imo magasto mo man na purpose sa kwarta gastuhon man na pili man na ingon nga unsa tag-ugal na dira. But then again, kung gusto ka magkuan gusto kag mulago pa nimong kwarta na mga legitimate nga pwede maglaguan like stock market sa bangko nimo kanang mga insurance nga naay return after some time kana mga investment pa palit ka ng lupa karon barato pa in the future nagmahal na siya kana malay legitimate na investment na siya pero kanang investment nga get rich quick kana unsa may ginatumbok kana sa imo ginatumbok sa imo ang pagka-greedy nimo nga greedy nga kanang gusto nimo kanang imong kwarta karon ma-high-low ka tungod sa ilang pag masalig sa imo nga kanimong kwarta karon imong ihatag na pagkaugma or sunod semana madoble na ana kuan. So actually you know that kabalo mo yun na risk nga mailad ka. So basta dili siya rehistrado sa SEC dili siya allowed. Unya mahatag na mo kwarta to kay sa legal na mo nga mo na siya. Without yun. Kuan na siya kanang tawag too good to be true ang tawag ana. So kung may mga tao nga magdula na sa imo you yourself would know na 50-50 di yun ako na yung buhay ng kwartahan 50-50 yun nga mo kuan na gini siya element sa pila dili yung kakapasalig unless kung may tuod yung ka nga salig kasayaha to kay amigo kayo mo thinking nga dili gyud na sa muluib sa imo later on mo po ay niluib sa imo nangwata lang siya sa imo tapos later on kuan day ka. But I tell you, basta dili siya legitimate, basta comes once time sa imo and you would say na too good to be true and then you are being convinced nga sige lagi tinuod lagi ni daghan na kayo daghan man sila mga testigo kana si kuano dato na kayo na siya pakita na siya kotse tarawa na ipakita na i-post sa Facebook na siya mga evidences para lang mahaylo ka para mabuhian nimo kwarta nimo ang totoo point nga pa mabuhian na nimo pero pag gamay pa lang imong hatag pwede pa tagaan dublihon no. So basta gusto pa ka mo dako na imong kwarta pag mo doble na mangita pa kag lain capital hantod mudaghan na imong dako na imong kwarta nga ibutang didto sa kadili tagaan i-withhold na sa imong tingalan lang ko oy ngano man so nagwapo man ang hatag sa kuha karon di naman. That's because they are pointing on your weakness. Ang weakness nimo pagka-greedy nimo because you would want some your money to grow astoundingly high by a click of a second. Gusto nimo inaana lang ba? So ila jud no. So ayaw yun mo padalaan yung harap po ng kuhan, self-control lang mo na siya. Temper your greed lang yun actually. Wala na siya liability. Basta makasnabot ka, mangutang ka niya, mag-agree ka sa interest, inyo anong sabot Wala na yung liability dira. Minsan pag 100,000, 100% pa na interest. Nagkana na dato, dagko kay interest. Pero kaya lang, pwede po siya, kay sa inyo haraman agreement pa lang niya, kung kamo lang mag-istorya. Siyempre kung mangutang ka, dili makamangutang ko dili nimo kinaangnan jud naman yung emergency. So kung emergency na wala kay kautangan na siya na lang yung line source mukuan ka mukagat yung ka kay kailangan lagi nimo. So to the point na musugot lang ka basta kung say ang terms mo yung siya sige pa pagabalik ka doble ha o sige lang kailangan lagi na karon sugot ka pag sugot nimo na karon you are bound no sa inyong agreement. But then kung kana iyang ginabuhat permanente na dili lang ikaw kay kung ikaw lang tapos wala na sila yung transaction, wala problema na. That's actually parang karang once in a blue moon lang ganing nga transaction. Pero kung ginabuhat na niya permanente, ginabuhat na niya regular siya na dagko kay interest, that's the time nga pwede na siya i-report because what he's doing is illegal. Illegal ang ginabuhat, dapat na siya lisensya na sa central bank magpa-interest o ginana. Ha? But then again, sa inyo lang, one time transaction lang na siya, wala wala na siya kuan, wala siya problema kay agreement man na ninyong duha. Pero kung regular na ginabuhat, negosyo na jud, na siya pwede, dapat i-report na lang siya. Kay violation na po na siya sa kuan. Na yung mga balaod nga na violate ana. Any more questions? Dili, utang man na, wala man na dili na estafa kay utang man. Wala yung preso sa utang. Ang qualified sa estafa katong kitagaan mo siya, bayaran ako na yung kuan B. Bayaran lang kita ka, ambi na yung mga kuan B, yung butang bayaran lang kita ka. At ulo ko sa balay, makuha ko kwarta. Ambi na, kuha, gihatag man mo tong imong jewelry. Hindi wala nang gihuli ang jewelry, wala siya mabalik, maghatag kwarta, kanang estafa. Dili man na utang kay giilad man ka. Pero kato utang man na utang, bisag wala agreement. All the more nga estafa na siya kung wala agreement, no, kung katong utang, basta wala agreement, basta utang, wala problema na. Inyo man ang sabot. Di po di mo ma-approve nga mapapriso na siya, nga estafa na siya kung wala mo agreement. Dapat mapautang ka, pasaynon yun mo siya. Ha? Mapautang ka, pasaynon na, labi na kung na may sabot ka interest, dapat pasaynon yun mo nangutang sa imo. Wala siya gipirmahan ng agreement, mas kuan ka, alkansi ka, pwede mo paninglon good. Ay sabot naman ninyo kung dili ko siya kung dili siya mong ingon nga wala man kun sabot kana estafa na. Lahi po na estafa ha. Kana mo yung so wala mo ko idawat sa imuha nga kuan, kwarta, wala man maningil makasakwa. Kana estafa. Mo na siya. Dili na siya. Kanang gidinay niyo, di ba? Kato namatay gi kuan kanina tato. Denying nga na siya na receive. Ayun. Estafa na siya actually. Dili na siya utang. Ato kag barangay, imo pa dito sa barangay niya, may pa-register dito may imong claim siya. Dili man criminal case code kung kuan dili estafa. Anyway, dito ka sa barangay para paninglon mo siya, dito mong sabot, palipila ibayad niya sa imo every kada bulan.